They say the Blood Queen never forgives. Yet her warships now guard Earth because one human fed the wrong children. What kind of mercy makes predators protect us? Tell me where you're watching from. And subscribe to see why humanity's kindness terrifies the galaxy. Marcus Vale wasn't supposed to be anyone important. At 44, he'd mastered the art of being invisible. The kind of man you'd pass in the corridors of Jartoon's orbital slums without a second glance. Another failed mechanic. Another widower drowning in memories. The photo on his workbench had yellowed at the edges. Sarah's smile, frozen in time, watched him portion out stolen rations every night, company surplus, expired nutrition packs. Things that would have been spaced anyway. He told himself it was practical. Waste not, want not. But really, it was the only thing that made the silence bearable. The refugee kids knew his schedule. Tuesdays and Fridays, after the second shift. They'd wait in corridor C7, a dozen species he couldn't name, all wearing the same hollow-eyed hunger. The Nixtar child always tried to joke. The little Credonian would bow formally before accepting food, even though she was probably 6. Marcus had learned not to ask about their parents. Tonight, corridor C7 was blocked. Maintenance drones, their lights blinking warning patterns. Marcus swore softly, checked his chrono. The kids would be waiting. He knew shortcuts through the old sections, places where the station's bones showed through. The detour took him past abandoned cargo bays. His breath fogged in the recycled air. These sections barely got heat anymore. He was about to turn back when he heard it. A sound that made his mechanic's instincts scream wrong, whimpering, high-pitched, desperate. The container was half buried in shadow, its door hanging open. Marcus approached slowly, hand on the plasma cutter he wasn't supposed to carry. The sound came again. Closer now, he could hear the chattering. Teeth against metal, shivering. 3 small shapes huddled together in the darkness. Marcus's first instinct was to run, because he knew those shapes. Every human in Jartoon knew. Silver skin that caught the dim light. Small, yes, but already showing the ridges that would become spines. Claws that hadn't yet learned to kill. Varkesh cubs, the species that made grown soldiers cross the street, whose wars had burned entire systems, who viewed other species as either threats or food, nothing in between. One of the cubs looked up at him. Its eyes were red, but not with bloodlust, with cold, with fear. Marcus stood frozen, hands still on the cutter. Every survival instinct screamed at him to leave, to pretend he'd never seen this, to let someone else's problem stay someone else's problem. The smallest cub tried to growl. It came out as a squeak. Marcus closed his eyes, saw Sarah's face, heard her voice from a decade ago standing in their kitchen on Earth, lecturing him about the stray cat he'd said they couldn't afford to feed. When has hunger ever cared about species, Marcus? He opened his eyes. The cubs were watching him, 3 small predators tense to either flee or fight their impossible fight. Marcus slowly lowered his hand from the cutter, reached instead for his pack. The nutrient bars weren't much, definitely not Varkesh diet, but they were calories, and calories were warmth, and warmth was life. Hungry is hungry, he muttered, more to himself than them. Species doesn't change that. He set the bars down slowly, backed away 3 steps. The cubs didn't move, hadn't learned to trust yet, which was probably smart. Marcus settled against the far wall, made himself small, unthreatening. It took 10 minutes before the largest cub crept forward, sniffed the bar, took it back to the others. By the time they'd finished eating, Marcus had pulled out the emergency thermal blanket from his pack. The one for if you got stuck in the old sections during a cold snap. He spread it near them, not close enough to seem like a threat. The cubs watched him with those ancient red eyes. Then the smallest one chirped. Actually chirped, like something harmless. Marcus surprised himself by smiling. He didn't know why he did what he did next. Maybe it was the silence of his HAB unit. Maybe it was the way the cubs huddled together, trying to share warmth they didn't have. Maybe he just needed to hear a human voice, even if it was his own. He started singing, An old Earth lullaby Sarah used to hum, something about stars and sailing and finding your way home. The cub's eyes widened. Then slowly they moved toward the blanket, toward the warmth, toward him. When Marcus finally left, hours later, 3 small predators were sleeping peacefully. The smallest one had tucked itself against his leg before he'd carefully moved it to the blanket. Marcus walked back through the cold corridors, hands shaking slightly. He'd just committed 6 violations of Confederacy law. Fed Varkesh cubs without authorization. Entered restricted sectors. Probably contaminated a crime scene, given that someone had clearly abandoned those cubs here. He should report it. He knew he should report it. Instead, Marcus went home, heated a cup of coffee in his battered Nostromo mug, and sat in the dark trying not to think about 3 small shapes that were probably dead by morning anyway. He didn't know that every moment had been recorded by station security. Didn't know that somewhere in Varkesh space alarms were already screaming. Didn't know that the 3 cubs sleeping peacefully with full bellies were the children of the most dangerous mother in the galaxy. Marcus Vale had just made the kind of mistake that changes the fate of entire systems. And he wouldn't know until morning when the sky above Jartun began to burn. The alarm woke him. Not the usual morning cycle, but the deep, bone-rattling kind that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. Marcus stumbled to his terminal. Every screen in Sector 7 showed the same message in 18 languages. Station lockdown. Imperial emergency. All residents remain in quarters. His neighbor, a Peluvian trader named Grix, was banging on doors. His translator unit screamed static panic. They are looking for someone. Someone touched the Blood Queen's children. Marcus felt his stomach drop into his boots. Blood Queen. The surveillance footage was everywhere by noon. Grainy, thermal shifted, but unmistakable. A human male in a maintenance jacket. Kneeling. Feeding something. Wrapping it in fabric. Singing. Marcus watched himself commit interstellar suicide in 12 frames per second. Station security arrived first. Confederation Navy, then something worse. Ships Marcus could not identify. Dark and predatory, positioning around the station like a noose tightening. The human liaison officer looked like she had aged a decade. "Do you understand what you did?" Marcus sat in the interrogation cube, hands shaking. They were cold. They were property, royal bloodline, the Ardessa Cthulhu's personal offspring. The name hit like a physical blow. Ardessa, the Crimson Empress, the Silver Death. 3 meters of apex predator wrapped in honor and violence. She had ended wars by showing up. Conquered species whispered her name like a curse. "I didn't know," Marcus said. "Everyone knows." The officer pulled up files. Battle footage. Planets surrendering at her arrival. The Varkesh don't negotiate. They don't forgive. Their concept of justice is... She trailed off. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the larger ships arriving. Massive. Organic-looking. They did not request docking permission. They simply came. An alien diplomat from the Nuarian Confederation addressed the station. His voice cracked with fear, badly hidden. "The Varkesh demand the human who touched the royal bloodline. We are attempting to explain it was a cultural misunderstanding, but..." Someone asked, "But what?" But they are not listening, and they are not leaving. Marcus thought about his son, about the last bedtime story, about how small humans were in a universe of giants. The sky above Jartun began to darken at hour 43. Not with clouds, with the underside of a warship so large it created its own weather. The atmospheric processors screamed, trying to compensate. The roar of its engines could be heard in the mountains 200 kilometers away. Someone on the station whispered, "She's here." Marcus looked up through the reinforced window. The ship blotted out the sun. On its hull, in script that burned like molten metal, a single word in Varkesh. Ardessa. The officer's terminal chimed. Her face went pale. "They are sending someone down. They want you brought to Landing Bay 9. Marcus stood. His hands had stopped shaking. There was a strange calm now. the calm of a man who had already decided he was dead. "Did I hurt them?" he asked quietly. The officer blinked. "What? The children. Did I hurt them?" "No, you—" She looked confused. "You fed them, kept them warm." Marcus nodded. "Then I made the right choice." He walked toward Landing Bay 9 alone. Landing Bay 9 had been cleared. 1,000 people evacuated in 20 minutes. Only Marcus remained, flanked by guards who looked more terrified than he felt. The ship descended. Not landing. Hovering. Gravity plating humming with enough power to flatten a city. They came out like liquid violence. Varkesh warriors, 7 feet tall. Silver skin like living metal. Eyes burning red. Each one carried weapons that looked grown rather than built. They moved in perfect silence. Then she descended. Ardessa Khathun was everything the stories promised and worse. 3.5 meters of coiled death. Her scales caught the light like chrome. Her eyes glowed like cooling lava. She wore armor that seemed part of her body, black and crimson. The air around her vibrated with barely contained fury. When she spoke, Marcus felt it in his chest. Low. A voice like a rock slide. "I am told a human touched my children." The guards pushed Marcus forward. His legs almost gave out. Ardessa crossed the bay in 4 strides, leaned down. Her face was centimeters from his. He could see the individual scales, the ancient scars, the absolute totality of something that could end him without effort. "You fed them?" It was not a question. Marcus swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." "Why? Not why did you? Just why? As if the concept itself was alien." "They were cold," Marcus said, his voice cracked, "and hungry." Ardessa straightened, tilted her head. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the children arrived. They came running, tumbling, moving with that strange grace predators had even when young. They rushed past the warriors, past their mother. Straight to Marcus. The smallest one, the one that had cried, grabbed his leg. The translator clicked. "Father Small! Father Small!" Marcus froze. The guards raised weapons. Ardessa raised one hand and every weapon lowered. She knelt, eye level with her children, spoke in a language that sounded like steel being forged. The children answered, urgent and overlapping. One pointed at Marcus, said something that made Ardessa's eyes widen. She stood, looked at Marcus, at the children clinging to him, back to Marcus. "They tell me," she said slowly, "that you gave them warmth, food, safety, that you made sounds, soft sounds." "I sang to them," Marcus admitted. "Just an old lullaby." The smallest child was crying again, but not from fear. It pressed against Marcus's leg, making a sound like purring. Ardessa's expression was unreadable. When she spoke again, her voice was different, quieter. "You are aware of what they are? What we are?" "Yes." "You knew we eat species like yours?" "Yes." "And you still fed them?" Marcus looked down at the children, at their little clawed hands holding his pants. "Hungry is hungry, ma'am, predator or not." The bay was silent enough to hear breathing. Ardessa turned to her warriors. When she spoke, her voice carried across every speaker on the station. "This human touched my blood. By right of the old laws, his life is mine." Marcus closed his eyes. "Release him." Marcus opened his eyes. Ardessa looked at him. Something ancient and complicated in her gaze. "The debt of the Varkesh is eternal. Human, you protected what was mine. Therefore, you are mine to protect." She gestured. Warriors stepped back. "You will come to the Imperial vessel. As my guest, the children have claimed you as Father Small." Her voice carried a note of bewilderment. "This is unprecedented." Marcus felt the children pulling at him, looked up at their mother, at the most dangerous being in 12 systems. "Do I have a choice?" Ardessa showed her teeth. It might have been a smile. "No." The guards watched, speechless, as Marcus Vale walked onto an Imperial Varkesh warship. surrounded by the children who had decided he was theirs, led by the Empress who could not understand why a human had fed predators when no one was watching. Behind them, the station exploded into chaos. The Imperial ship was impossible. Organic corridors that pulsed like breathing, lighting that followed movement, everything sized for beings twice human height. Marcus kept bumping his head. The children thought this was hilarious. The smallest one, who the translator called Scarish, would warn him in sing-song tones. "Duck, Father Small! Duck, Hurries!" A priestess found them in what Marcus assumed was a garden. She was ancient by human standards, scales dulled to pewter, eyes milky. She spoke in accented but clear galactic standard. "You are the human!" "Marcus Vale, ma'am." She circled him like he was a specimen. The children sat nearby watching. "Do you understand what you did? Fed some kids?" Her laugh was like rocks falling. Among the Varshash, the act of feeding another living being is sacred, reserved for mothers to offspring, mates to each other. It is the highest gesture of claiming, of bonding, of declaring kinship. Marcus felt his face flush. "I just didn't want them to freeze." "Yes," the priestess said. "That is what confuses her radiance. You performed the rite of blood feeding to beings not your species, not your pack, for no gain." One of the children, Veka, the bold one, tugged on the priestess's robe, said something in Varkesh. The old female's eyes widened. "They say you made sounds, melodic sounds, to calm them. Just a lullaby my son liked. Songs are for grief-sharing or battle glory. You sang for comfort." The concept seemed to break her brain. "The Empress will want to speak with you. She is attempting to understand." The children insisted on showing Marcus their rooms, taught him how to growl properly, which mostly made him cough, laughed when he tried to roar, which sounded more like a broken exhaust pipe. In return, he taught them rock, paper, scissors. They loved it with terrifying intensity. He was teaching them a hand-clapping game when Ardessa arrived. The children scattered, then reformed behind Marcus like he was a shield. She watched this with the expression of someone solving an equation that should not exist. "Walk with me, human." They left the children with guards who looked deeply uncomfortable babysitting. Ardessa led Marcus through corridors that grew quieter, more private. "My advisors believe you are a spy, a saboteur, some elaborate human scheme." "I am a mechanic, Your Radiance." "Yes." She stopped at a viewport. Stars streamed past. "That is what troubles me most. You are nobody, unremarkable. Yet you did something only kin would do." Marcus thought about his wife, his son, the empty years since. "Maybe that's all humans are, ma'am. Unremarkable people doing small things." Ardessa turned. Her eyes caught the starlight. "Among my people you have declared yourself parent. The children have accepted. This creates bonds that cannot be broken without death." "I didn't know. I am aware." She looked tired suddenly, ancient. "There is a phrase, old, from before we conquered the stars. The prey that feeds the hunter changes the hunt forever." Marcus felt something shift, saw past the armor and the legend, saw a mother who had almost lost her children, who did not understand why a stranger had saved them. "May I ask a question, Your Radiance?" "Ardessa, if your father's small, formality is absurd. Where were the children when I found them? Why were they alone?" Her expression went dark. "That is a question with complicated answers, and enemies who hoped I would blame you instead of searching for truth." A chime sounded. An aide appeared, bowing low, spoke rapidly in Varkesh. Ardessa's posture changed, went rigid. She looked at Marcus. "The Confederation offers a treaty. They call it the Mercy Incident. They want you as a symbol." "I am not a symbol." "No," Ardessa agreed. "You are something more dangerous. You are proof that strength and compassion are not opposites." She paused. "There is a dinner, political, horrible, I would be honored if you would attend. As my guest. Marcus remembered the priestess's words. Understanding dawned. Is that invitation what I think it means in your culture? Only if you accept. He thought about it. About the children calling him Father Small. About a woman who ruled through terror, learning what it meant to ask instead of command. I would be honored, Ardessa. Her smile was small, real. For just a moment, not an empress. Just someone who had been surprised by kindness. The children burst back in, tackle-hugging Marcus's legs. Skaresh held up tiny claws. Father Small. We learned new game. Paper beats rock because paper covers rock. Marcus laughed. Ardessa watched. And somewhere in the background, in shadows, a general named Korvan watched too, and began to plan. The dinner was political theater, ambassadors from 6 species, all pretending not to stare at the humans sitting beside the Blood Queen. Marcus wore clothes that almost fit. Ardessa wore armor that looked ceremonial, but he suspected could still cut through starship hull. The Nuarian ambassador raised a glass. To the Mercy incident, proof that understanding can bridge any divide. Ardessa's expression said she wanted to bridge his skull with a bulkhead. Marcus touched her arm gently. She relaxed, fractionally. After the speeches, after the posturing, they found themselves alone on an observation deck. The children were asleep in their quarters, finally worn out. They like you more than my generals, Ardessa said. Your generals don't play rock, paper, scissors. She laughed. Actually laughed. It sounded rusty, like she was out of practice. My mate, Vorin. He died in the Keltar campaign, 5 years ago. I have not allowed myself softness since. Marcus understood immediately. My wife and son. Mining accident, 3 years back. Sarah and Tom. They stood in silence. 2 people shaped by absence, by the holes loved ones left behind. How do you continue? She asked quietly. By remembering they would want me to. By feeding kids who need feeding. By... He gestured helplessly. By finding small reasons to keep going. Among my people, grief is rage. We conquer it, transform it into strength. Among mine, grief is grief. We just try not to drown in it. Ardessa touched the scar on her chest. Old, deep. Varen used to say something. Strength without tenderness is only destruction. He sounds wise. He was a fool who believed in softness. Her voice cracked. He was right. The children had declared Marcus Father Small in a ceremony Marcus did not fully understand, but felt in his bones. Ardessa officiated, speaking words that made the priestesses weep. Skaresh presented him with a tooth, a baby tooth that had just fallen out. So you remember us always, Father Small. Marcus kept it in his pocket. Next to the hollow frame of his family, the Confederation announced the treaty. Ships from 20 species witnessed. The Mercy Accord. First treaty between humans and Varkesh, based not on fear, but gratitude. In his quarters that night, Marcus should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt watched. The attack came at 0300 hours. Silent. Professional. Whoever they were, they knew the ship's layout. Knew where the children slept. Marcus woke to Skaresh's scream. He ran in his sleep clothes. No weapon. No plan. Just instinct. Found them in the hallway. 3 children backing away from figures in dark armor. Not Varkesh. Something else. Hired. Professional. Marcus threw himself between them and the kids. Get back! A blast missed his head by centimeters. Skaresh grabbed his leg, crying. Veka tried to pull him away. The 3rd child, Thresh, roared. A baby sound, pathetic, but trying. The assassin raised his weapon. Marcus closed his eyes. The blast never came. He opened them to find Ardessa holding the assassin by the throat. She had crossed 30 meters in the time it took Marcus to blink. Her eyes burned. You dare. She threw the assassin into a wall hard enough to crack both. The others scattered. Alarms screamed. Warriors poured into the corridor. Ardessa knelt beside Marcus, checking him for wounds. The children clung to both of them. Who sent them? Marcus asked. I will find out. Her voice promised violence. Are you hurt? Are they hurt? We're okay. Scared, but okay. She pulled them all close, an empress holding a human mechanic and 3 shaking children. This was a test, to see if I would protect you, to prove I have been softened. Have you? Marcus asked. Ardessa looked at him, at the children, at the walls still echoing with danger. Yes, she said, and that makes me more dangerous than they can imagine. Later, in medical, a warrior approached Marcus, old, scarred, eyes cold. You made her radiance weak, human. Marcus met his gaze. I made her children safe. If you think that's weakness, you don't understand strength. The warrior's name was Corvan. He smiled without humor. We shall see, Father Small. We shall see. The investigation took 3 days. Marcus was not allowed near the children. Security protocols. He spent the time fixing things in the engine room. Varkesh engineers watched him work with fascination and suspicion. Ardessa found him elbow-deep in a plasma regulator. We need to talk. They went to her command chamber. The walls displayed tactical data, troop movements, political alignments. It looked like preparing for war. The assassins were hired through 6 intermediaries, but I found the source. She pulled up a hologram. Corvan, my most trusted general, architect of 12 victories, hero of the Keltar campaign. Marcus remembered those cold eyes. Why? Because he believes I have been compromised, that allowing you near my children, near me, shows weakness. She cycled through more data. He is not alone. Half my council agrees. Maybe they're right. Ardessa's head snapped toward him. Explain. You're changing, letting your kids play games, laughing, asking instead of commanding. That's not the Blood Queen they followed. Is that weakness? Marcus thought carefully. My wife used to say the hardest thing in the universe is staying soft when everything tells you to be hard, being kind when it's easier to be cruel. If that's weakness, the universe has it backwards. Ardessa was quiet for a long time. There is history you do not know. 300 years ago, we fought a species called the Varith. They were compassionate, generous. They offered us peace, trade, mercy. What happened? They used our honor codes against us, sent children as emissaries. We could not harm children. By the time we understood it was a tactic, we had lost 3 worlds. We learned compassion was a trap. We have taught this for generations. Understanding dawned. Corvan thinks I'm doing the same thing, using your kids to weaken you. Yes? What do you think? Ardessa looked at him, through him. I think you fed children who were cold because that is what you do. I think you are the most dangerous thing in my empire. Not because you scheme, but because you do not. A chime interrupted. The priestess entered, grave-faced. The council has convened. They demand proof that the children have not been contaminated by human weakness. They want the trial of blood. No, Ardessa said immediately. It is their right under old law. Corvan invokes it. Marcus looked between them. What's the trial of blood? Ritual combat, to prove purity of bloodline. The children would face trained opponents, to prove they are still warriors. They're babies. They are Varkesh. The priestess's voice was sad. The law does not account for childhood. Marcus felt rage building, clean, focused. And if you refuse? Civil war, Ardessa said quietly. Corvan has enough support. He will claim I am unfit. The empire splits. Millions die. There has to be another way. There is not. Ardessa's voice was hollow. I can protect you, but I cannot protect them from our own laws without destroying everything we are. Marcus paced, thought. Then I'll fight. You are human. You cannot. I'm Father Small. That makes me Varkesh by your own laws, right? I'll take their place in the trial. The priestess made a sound like breaking glass. Impossible! You would die in seconds. Maybe, but at least they don't have to. He looked at Ardessa. You said the children accepted me, that the bond can't be broken without death. So let's use your laws the right way. Ardessa stood, towered over him. For a moment, Marcus thought she might strike him. Instead, she pulled him close. You are the bravest fool in 12 systems. I've been called worse. That night, Marcus was arrested, not by Ardessa's order. Corvan had moved faster, claimed emergency powers. The council voted. Marcus sat in a cell, not cruel, just isolated. He could hear the children crying in the distance, calling for him. It was the worst sound he had ever heard. Corvan visited. You should have stayed away, human. Should have let nature take its course. Now you have given me everything I needed. A human so weak he faces trial for infant predators. When you die, and you will, it will prove that compassion is death. Or it will prove that compassion is worth dying for, Marcus said quietly. Corvan smiled. We shall see tomorrow, in the arena of testing, before every eye in the Empire. He left. Marcus sat in darkness and began to pray to gods he had stopped believing in when his family died. Morning came too fast. Guards brought Marcus to a holding cell beneath the arena. He could hear the crowd above. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. The roar of anticipation. The children were in a cell across from his. They pressed against the energy barrier, crying. Father Small, please, Skarish sobbed. We go together, not leave you. Marcus knelt so they were eye level. Listen to me. You three are the bravest warriors I have ever met. But right now, I need you to be brave by staying here, by letting me do this. Can you do that? Vecca, always the bold one, wiped her eyes. We be brave, like you. Not braver, Marcus said. I'm terrified. Thresh, the quiet one, pushed something through the barrier's gap. A small carving, crude, a human figure with 3 small shapes around it. We made, so you remember us. Marcus's vision blurred. He pocketed the carving next to Skarish's tooth. I'll never forget you. Never. A door opened. More guards. These ones were conflicted. Marcus could see it. Young ones. They had watched him with the children. Watched Ardessa change. Where's Ardessa? Marcus asked. One guard, barely older than adolescent, hesitated. General Corvan declared her compromised. She is bound, in chains made for war criminals. She can hear but not reach you. Marcus felt cold settle in. And she let herself be chained? She submitted, to prevent civil war, but her eyes... The guard shuddered. Her eyes promised death. They led Marcus to the arena floor. The space was massive, Roman Colosseum crossed with alien nightmare. Every seat filled, cameras broadcasting to the fleet, to the Empire, to the galaxy. Corvan stood in the center, magnificent in battle armor. Citizens of the Varkesh, today we prove that the old ways are still strong, that softness is death, that this human has infected our future with weakness. The crowd roared. Most agreed, but Marcus saw faces in the younger sections, uncertain, conflicted. The human will face the trial by combat. When he falls, as he will, we will know that compassion has no place among conquerors. And when I don't fall, Marcus called out. Laughter, cruel and certain, Corvan smiled. Then we will have witnessed the impossible. He raised his hand, released the opponents. They were not warriors. They were Vorgath, slave beasts, 6-legged, armored, bred for arena combat, 3 of them. Marcus had no weapon, no armor, just a mechanic's body and bad knees. The first Vorgath charged. Marcus dove, rolled, came up running. The crowd howled. Not for him. At him. He lasted 4 minutes before the first hit caught him. Ribs cracked. He went down, tasted copper, got up. The second hit took him off his feet. Arm broke. He heard it snap, got up. In her chains, Ardessa roared. The sound shook the arena. Guards struggled to hold her. The chains were designed for war criminals, for berserkers. They held, barely. Marcus fell again, vision blurring. He heard the children screaming, heard Skaresh crying his name. He thought about Tom, about the last bedtime story, about how his son had asked if heroes were real. Marcus got up. The crowd went quiet. Corvan's smile faltered. Marcus stayed on his feet not because he was strong, but because falling meant those children would face this. Falling meant Corvan won. Falling meant compassion died. The Vorgath circled. Marcus swayed, barely standing, blood in his eyes. In the stands, something changed. A young warrior stood, then another. They were not cheering. They were watching, bearing witness. An old priestess in the royal box raised her hand. Enough. He has proven courage. That is sufficient for the trial. He has proven nothing but human stubbornness, Corvan snarled. He must win or die. Then change the trial, the priestess said. Let him face you. The arena went silent. Corvan's eyes blazed. This was not the plan. But backing down now would show weakness. Very well, I will end this farce myself. They removed the Vorgath, gave Marcus 30 seconds to breathe. Ardessa's voice carried across the arena. Broken, desperate. Marcus, fall, please, just fall. I release you from your bonds. You do not have to die. Marcus looked up at her, at the children pressed against their cell barrier, at the faces in the crowd, young and old, certain and uncertain. He smiled through bloody teeth. Yes, I do. Corvan entered the arena, 7.5 feet of pure warrior, weapons that glowed, armor that had survived wars. Marcus could barely stand. The general raised his blade. Your compassion ends here. Marcus thought of Sarah, of Tom, of 3 cold children in a cargo bay, of an empress learning to laugh. No, he whispered. It starts here. Corvan swung, and the universe held its breath. The blade stopped, not because Marcus blocked it, not because Corvan hesitated, because the children screamed. Not in fear, in fury. 3 small voices roaring challenge. The sound echoed, wrong, broken. Baby predators trying to sound like warriors, and failing, and not caring. Corvan froze, so did the arena. Because in 3,000 years of Varkesh history, children did not challenge warriors. Children did not refuse their place. Children did not break protocol. Skaresh rammed the energy barrier. Again, small body throwing itself against force that could kill. You not hurt, Father Small. Veka and Thresh joined. 3 babies trying to break through walls that held war criminals. A murmur ran through the crowd. Uncomfortable. Confused. Then Skaresh did something unprecedented, something that made even Corvan step back. The child refused to eat. In Varkesh culture, refusing food was refusing life. It was the ultimate protest, the final insult. Children did not know how to refuse food. It was biological impossibility. Except Skaresh pushed away the guards bringing rations. No eat, not while Father Small hurts. Veka followed. We no eat. Thresh, quiet always, spoke loudest. We starve first. The arena erupted, not in cheers, in shock. Cameras broadcast it live. 3 royal children declaring hunger strike for a human. In the royal box, young warriors started standing, not in protest, in witnessing, in recognition of something they could not name but felt. Corvan's face twisted. This proves my point. They have been contaminated, made weak, or made strong in ways you do not understand. An old voice called out. A veteran, missing an arm, covered in scars. He stood in the warrior section. I fought in the Kelter campaign, watched Vorin, the Empress's mate, sacrifice himself for his soldiers. We called it weakness then, emotion overruling logic. But his death rallied us, made us fight harder, made us win. Other voices joined, quiet. Building. The human protected children that were not his. He faced death for beings not his species. He got up when any warrior would have stayed down. A young warrior climbed down into the arena floor, stood between Marcus and Corvan. I challenge the premise. This is not weakness on trial. This is strength we have forgotten. Another joined, then 5 more, then 20. Corvan roared, "Stand aside! This is sacrilege!" But they did not move. Young warriors, old veterans, males and females, standing in silence, not fighting, just standing, bearing witness to a human who would not fall. Ardessa's chains cracked, not from her pulling, from her guards loosening them. One by one, the young ones. They unlocked her bonds. She rose like dawn, like judgment, walked onto the arena floor through a sea of warriors who parted for her. Corvan faced her. "You have lost control of your children, your warriors, yourself." "No," Ardessa said quietly. "I have found control of what matters." She looked at Marcus, at the children, back to Corvan. "You claim compassion is weakness, but this human has done what we could not. He has made our children brave enough to refuse injustice, given warriors reason to question blind obedience, shown me that strength can protect without destroying. He has made them soft. He has made them whole." Ardessa's voice carried. "We created a society of warriors and called it strength, but we forgot why we fight, who we protect, what we could be beyond conquest." She knelt beside Marcus, helped him stand. He swayed. She steadied him. "The trial is over," she declared. "The human has proven not that compassion is strength, but that stubbornness combined with love is unbeatable." Corvan drew his weapon. "Then I invoke leader challenge, you or me, for control of the Empire." Ardessa straightened, her eyes burned. "Accepted, but not here. Not now. First, we care for the wounded, human and Varkesh alike. We remember what we are supposed to protect." She turned her back on him. Ultimate insult. Walked Marcus toward the medical bay. The children broke free of their cell, guards letting them go. They swarmed Marcus, crying and laughing and roaring baby roars. Behind them, Corvan stood alone in the arena, half the crowd standing in support of something they barely understood, the other half uncertain, afraid. Change looked like chaos, but it also looked like children refusing to eat until their chosen parent was safe, and that was something even warriors could understand. In medical, as they set Marcus's bones, Ardessa sat beside him. "Why did you not fall?" "Because," Marcus said through painkillers, "they needed to see someone not fall. Needed to know that love for strangers is possible. That's all humans do, really. We love stupidly and stubbornly and without logic. It is our worst trait and our best weapon." Ardessa smiled, tears on her silver cheeks. "Tomorrow I face Corvan. If I lose, you and the children die." "Then don't lose. If I win through violence, nothing changes. He becomes a martyr for the old ways." Marcus thought. "Then don't fight him the old way. Fight him the human way." "Which is?" "By proving that what he thinks is your weakness is actually your strength." In his cell, Corvan sharpened weapons, planned strategies, prepared for battle. He did not see the seeds of change taking root, did not see young warriors questioning, old veterans remembering, children refusing to accept that cruelty was strength. He only saw an empire that needed correction, and tomorrow he would correct it with blood. The arena filled before dawn. This time, no excitement, only tension. Leader challenge had not been called in 70 years. Last time, 3 systems burned in the aftermath. Marcus watched from the medical bay, arm in a cast, ribs wrapped. The children refused to leave his side. Skaresh had not eaten in 18 hours. Stubborn little thing. "She'll win," Marcus told them. "Your mother is the strongest warrior alive." "What if strong not enough?" Becca asked quietly. Marcus had no answer. Ardessa came to say goodbye. She wore armor that looked ancient, ceremonial, but functional, carried weapons Marcus recognized from history files. God killers, they were called. She knelt before the children, touched each small head. Whatever happens, you are mine. You are loved. That is more important than empires. Then she looked at Marcus. If I fall, take them. Run. There are humans who will hide you. You won't fall. If I do, promise me. Marcus promised. She left, walked toward the arena like walking toward execution. The rules of Leader Challenge were simple. 2 enter, 1 leaves. No mercy, no surrender. Fight until one cannot continue. Korvan waited in the center. Fresh, rested. He had not spent the night being broken in trials, had not learned to care. He was pure warrior, undistracted by emotion. Ardessa entered to silence, not cheering, just watching, waiting to see what kind of empire they would become. Last chance, Korvan offered. Exile the human, return to the old ways. We can rebuild what you have damaged. I have damaged nothing, Ardessa said. I have remembered what we forgot. They circled, professionals, reading each other, looking for weakness. Korvan struck first. Fast, brutal, met with equal force. They were matched, perfectly. Years of training, decades of combat, gods fighting gods. The battle raged. 12 minutes, 15, 20, both bleeding, both slowing, neither yielding. Then Korvan did something unexpected, dishonorable. He threw a blade toward the medical bay, toward where the children watched. Ardessa dove, intercepted, took the blade in her shoulder, screamed. Korvan kicked her down. You see, compassion is weakness. You sacrifice yourself for human pets. He raised his weapon, prepared for the killing blow. And Marcus did the stupidest, bravest thing in his life. He stepped into the arena, broken ribs, shattered arm, human body that had no business being on a battlefield. He walked between Korvan and Ardessa. Stop. The word carried. Quiet, certain. Korvan laughed. The pet tries to save its master. This is perfect. I will kill you both. He swung. The children screamed, broke from the guards. 3 small bodies running into danger. Time seemed to slow. The blade came down. The children threw themselves forward. Ardessa roared, pulled herself up, threw herself toward her babies. Marcus grabbed all 3, twisted, put his body between them and death. The blade struck, not killing, but cutting, deep. Marcus felt ribs crack again, felt something vital tear, but the children were untouched. The arena went silent. Korvan stood over them, 5 beings, 1 human, 3 children, 1 empress, all tangled together, all bleeding, all protecting each other. He raised the blade again. Pathetic, all of you. And something inside Ardessa broke. Not her body, her restraint. She moved like lightning, like fury given form. Caught Korvan's wrist, twisted. The blade dropped. She hit him. Once, twice, 3 times, each blow containing centuries of suppressed emotion, rage, grief, hope, fear, love. She drove him to his knees, held him there. Warriors flooded the floor, not to stop her, to witness. You call this weakness? Ardessa's voice carried to every camera, every screen, every ship in the fleet. This human, this tiny, fragile being, took blades meant for children not his species, not once, but twice, while you, our greatest general, would kill babies to prove a point. She threw him down, stood over him. He taught me something I forgot when Voreen died. That strength without love is just cruelty, that protection without compassion is just control, that warriors fight not for glory, but for the ones who cannot fight. She looked at the crowd, at the cameras, at history being made. The old ways kept us strong, but they did not keep us alive inside. This human, this father small, he did what we could not. He chose love when logic said fear, chose sacrifice when survival said run, chose family when instinct said kill. Corvan tried to rise, failed. Blood loss, exhaustion, something deeper. The realization that he had lost before the fight even began. Ardessa knelt beside Marcus. The children swarmed him. He was barely conscious, bleeding, broken, smiling. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you step between?" "Because," Marcus breathed, "somebody has to show them that love is not weakness. It is the strongest thing we have." He passed out. The children cried. Ardessa held him, a pile of beings who should have been impossible, who should have been enemies, who had become family. The crowd stood. Young and old, uncertain and certain, they stood in silence, in recognition, in understanding of something that would change the Empire forever. Corvan was not killed. That would have made him a martyr. He was exiled, stripped of rank, left to wander, to see the changes he could not stop, to become a ghost of the past that was crueler than death and more merciful than he deserved. Marcus woke 3 days later, the children asleep around his bed. Ardessa in the corner, watching, guarding. "You should have let me die," he croaked. "Impossible," she said. "You taught me that family does not abandon family, not for empires, not for traditions, not for anything." Outside, the galaxy watched. Debates raged. Some called it weakness, some called it evolution. But in the medical bay, Marcus felt small clawed hands holding his, heard soft snores, saw an empress smile, and knew that whatever came next, it was worth it. Recovery took 2 months. Marcus learned to walk without limping. Almost. The children learned to be patient. Almost. Ardessa learned to rule with compassion. Almost. Change was messy, beautiful, terrifying. The Empire split. Not violently, but ideologically. Old guard versus new way. Half followed Corvan's philosophy from exile. Half followed Ardessa's transformation. Neither side knew what came next. But they were talking, not killing. That was progress. Marcus walked the ship. Stronger now. The children shadowed him everywhere. They were his. He was theirs. Simple as breathing. One morning, Ardessa found him at the viewport, staring at stars. "You are thinking of home." "I am nobody here," Finner Marcus said. "Important through accident. But on Earth, I am just me. A mechanic who feeds stray kids. You are Father Small, protector of the Imperial blood, symbol of the new way." "I am tired, Ardessa." He smiled sadly. "I miss working on engines, miss being nobody, miss—" He gestured vaguely. "Quiet." She understood immediately. "You want to leave." "I need to. Not forever, but for a while. The kids need to grow up Varkesh, not half human. And I need to remember who I was before I became a symbol." They stood in silence. Two people who had saved each other, who had learned that strength wore many faces. "I will arrange transport," Ardessa said finally. "But you must promise something." "Anything." "Visit. Let the children see you. Let me." She paused. "Let me remember what you taught us." The ceremony was massive. Marcus was named Protector of the Star Children, first human given Varkesh rank, the equivalent of being adopted into the Imperial line. Skarish gave him a carving, better made now, a human surrounded by 3 small predators, all of them smiling. Veka gave him a warrior's tooth, from Brave One, for brave Father Small. Thresh said nothing, just held Marcus's hand for 3 hours. The treaty was signed, the Mercy Accord, named for a mechanic who had not known he was making history, just feeding hungry kids. Humans and Varkesh would not be allies. Not yet. But they would not be enemies. They would be something new, something neither had words for. 5 years later, Marcus Vale lived in a small apartment in New Seattle, taught mechanics at a community college, lived quiet, anonymous, the way he preferred. Most students did not know he had changed galactic history. He liked it that way. The package arrived on a Tuesday, nondescript, no return address, just his name and the scent of something alien. Ozone and cinnamon. Inside, a box made of materials that should not exist, warm to the touch, alive in some indefinable way. A medallion, silver, shaped like a Varkesh tooth, engraved with words in 3 languages: Varkesh, human, galactic standard. For the man who taught an empress to be a mother. The hologram activated automatically. Ardessa, older, no less fierce, but softer around the edges. Marcus, it has been 5 years. The children are well. They ask for you constantly. Skarish leads the youth council now. Veka is training as a warrior. Thresh writes poetry. You would be proud. Her expression shifted. The Empire has changed. Not easily, not completely. But we have the compassion trials now. Young warriors must prove they can protect the weak, not just destroy the strong. We teach that strength and love are not opposites. She paused, smiled. Some of the old guard call it weakness still. Let them. The young ones know better. They call it the human way. Loving stupidly, stubbornly, without logic or profit. The hologram flickered. I wanted you to know, your people, Earth, we have positioned a defense fleet in your system, not as conquerors, as protectors, the children insisted. Said that Father Small's home should be as safe as theirs. Marcus felt tears building. Come visit us, Marcus Vale, or do not. Either way, you are ours. We are yours. That bond was forged in cargo bays and arena blood. It does not break. The hologram faded. Marcus sat in his small apartment, holding an alien artifact, crying for joy and loss and the beautiful, impossible mess of life. Outside his window, stars gleamed, and between them, barely visible, the running lights of Varkesh warships, keeping watch, keeping faith, keeping family safe. That night, Marcus taught his evening class. 16 students, mixed species, Varkesh, human, Teluvian, others, learning together, building together. One student, a young Varkesh female, asked why he taught mechanics instead of history. He was famous after all. Marcus smiled, pulled out the medallion. Because history is made by people who do small things without thinking about fame. I fed some kids who were cold. That is not heroic. That is just being human. But you changed everything, the girl insisted. No, Marcus said gently. I reminded everyone that love is not weakness. Compassion is not surrender. That the strongest thing in the universe is choosing kindness when cruelty is easier. He looked at his students. Mixed species. Learning together. Every one of you can do that. Feed the hungry, warm the cold, stand between the weak and harm. That is the human way. But it does not belong to humans. It belongs to anyone brave enough to try. After class, Marcus walked home under stars protected by predators who had learned to love. He thought about Sarah, about Tom, about 3 babies in a cargo bay, and knew, with absolute certainty, that his family would be proud. The last message from Ardessa was simple, 3 words. We remember you. Marcus looked up at the stars, at the ships keeping watch, at a universe that was learning slowly, painfully, that there were many kinds of strength. He whispered to the night, to the memory of his wife, to his son, to the future. Hungry is hungry. Species does not change that. Above Earth, Varkesh warriors stood watch, not because they feared, but because they loved. And in that moment, across light years and cultures and evolution itself, the universe learned something that would echo forever. Humans win not by fighting, but by feeding the enemy until the enemy becomes family. That is the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. That is humanity. That is hope. Maybe the universe doesn't change through empires, weapons, or treaties. Maybe it changes when one tired mechanic decides that hunger, no matter its shape, deserves mercy. Because in the end, humanity's greatest rebellion isn't conquest. It's compassion without permission. And that's the quiet miracle. We survive by refusing to stop caring, even when the logic of galaxies says we shouldn't. So tell me, what would you have done if the ones freezing in the dark weren't human? When does helping stop being survival and start being defiance? And how many wars could end if someone, somewhere, simply chose to feed the wrong children? If you made it this far, write the word mercy in the comments, so we'll know you carry that fire too. Tell us from which star, city, or corner of Earth you're watching this story. Subscribe, share, and keep this tiny rebellion alive. Because the next video on the screen isn't just another story. It's another reminder that kindness is humanity's most dangerous weapon.